Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2025 Spring Tufts Capstone student presentation. Our four students have been working really hard this semester on their project. I'm very excited for them to share it with all of you. I want to lay a little bit of context and ground rules for this. Uh, they've been working on this since January. They've been able to speak with a bunch of users, and they've been able to speak with some folks internally as well. We check in with them once a week, but they're doing all the work. They're just, asking us questions and whatever. They've got a presentation. I'm going to let them share, and then we're going to do a Q&A. I have an agenda doc. You can add some questions, comments, async as we go. I'll also try to keep up taking notes in there, and we'll discuss it after the presentation. So I will turn it over to you all if you want to share your screen.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our final presentation. We are Tufts students working with GitLab for our Human Factors Capstone project. Here's a brief overview of our team. My name is Moya, and I'm the project manager.
I'm Delia, and primarily the user researcher and the content writer.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a user researcher on this project.
I'm Ann, and I'm the product designer on the project.
So today we'll go through a brief agenda, starting with the introduction, problem validation, scope definition, ideation, and testing, and showcasing our final designs and future iterations and reflections. In order to start, we'll start with the introduction. So a brief timeline. We started this project in January, and this is the end-to-end design process and each step we took throughout the semester. We will take you guys along with us today. Starting with the problem, when developers receive a task in the form of an issue, they waste a lot of time reading through lengthy threads, scattered discussions, in order to fully understand what their next steps are. And in order to validate this problem, we have to first understand how do developers and other stakeholders onboard onto GitLab issues and what are their main pain points. To do this, we structured user interviews with 10 participants, 8 being internal users and 2 being external users, and participants included developers and designers. And our goal was to understand their workflow and how they usually onboard onto issues. What we learned from these interviews is that it can take any time from a couple of minutes to days for users to fully understand the issue depending on the context. There are also many hyperlinks that the users need to go through to find out more context on the previous issue. And when the project summary is not updated, it is really hard to onboard onto the issue because of the lack of information. Also, gathering context and reading through all the information is very time consuming. To further understand why this is a problem, let's meet our persona, John. John is a full-stack engineer at Fanatics, and his goal is to onboard onto the issue quickly in order to resolve the issue sooner. John is being mentioned by his project manager to help out with a new issue. However, upon interacting with this issue, he found it too time-consuming to scroll through all of the long discussions. He felt unsure about the background of the issue and confused about the outdated issue description that does not match the current discussion. He felt overwhelmed when clicking on the previous ancestor links to understand the background, and he found it hard to understand how current issues relate to other issues and epics, making him spend more time trying to understand the issue than actually fixing the issue itself. John's struggle is also what our participants relate to, and in fact, one of the participants said, you have 20 to 30 long comments kind of shifting the requirements, and then somewhere towards the end of the comment stream, you find this is the final requirement for the issue, and it does not match the issue description. So our overarching goal is to how we can streamline the way users onboard onto issues.
So although we understood the importance of our goal, we had identified several points of frustration. So now we moved on to identifying our scope, which meant identifying which areas our project would focus on. we were able to group our findings into three main themes of the problem areas we observed. There was complexity in navigation, which was due to scanning through links, code files, other issues, and even people to get further clarification from. Then, a difficulty in identifying context of the issue was brought because it wasn't immediately clear where an issue lies within the broader goals or project, or even because the description did not contain enough updated information. Additionally, having too much information was seen in the long discussion threads and overall in the long scroll format of an issues page, as we saw that John had scrolled through. These groupings led us to our two main paths, where we asked ourselves our first question of how we could make it easier for developers to see the most relevant discussion comments. This path would focus on the problem of lengthy discussion threads that we observed. Our second question we asked ourselves was how we could improve the process of understanding the relationships between ancestors, child items, linked items, and epics. This path focused on the problem of navigating between different issues pages. In having more direction, we were able to proceed with our ideation and testing phase. In this phase, we employed the Crazy 8 strategy, where we independently laid out 8 of our initial ideas. The knowledge gained from these interviews, paired with our collaboration in the Crazy 8 exercise, led us to our 2 concepts. The first concept was our pinning feature, and our second concept was the linked tree diagram. The pinning feature is here to help users stay updated on the most relevant discussions by having a section for important comments. As you can see, clicking on the pin brings the user down to the specific discussion thread or where the comment originated from. This provides an easier path for gaining context through these relevant discussions. Our second concept, the link tree diagram, focuses on helping users navigate related issues to gain context. It's located next to the list of child items and merge requests. And as you can see, clicking on a bubble of an issue takes you to the specific issue page. One notable thing is that it indicates whether there's a block existing, and it also includes epics. With now having both of our concepts, we still had the question of which specific concept to go with.
In order to answer our question of which concept we should go with next, we decided to do a round of concept testing. We had 5 participants, 2 internal and 3 external, and our goal here was really to understand which feature we should prioritize, the pinning feature or the link tree diagram. It was also a way for us to get some initial feedback for our designs and allow us to iterate. After a round of concept testing, it became really clear that the winner was the pinning feature. A common consensus between participants was that although the link tree diagram showed a very nice visualization of how issues, child items relate to each other, there was already a way to see this hierarchical tree in GitLab. And the pinning feature solved a more urgent problem of trying to find the most relevant discussions in a very long thread. Here was a quote that summarizes nicely how our users felt about the pin feature. And they said, I can immediately see the highlights or the main problem for this issue, which I think is a very good feature that I would actually go and use. Besides clarifying which feature we should pursue, we also gained a lot of insight into how we should iterate on our pin feature. A common feedback that we got was the location of the pins was not ideal. A lot of developers said that they always read the project description first and that the pin feature being at the top of the page was hiding the project description. Learning from that piece of feedback, we made 2 iterations to our design. The first being the main section layout, where we moved the pins to underneath of the project description. And the second being the sidebar layout, where we moved the pins to the side navigation bar. A second piece of feedback was regarding following the design system of GitLab. A lot of users felt like the pin icon didn't feel very GitLab. And so when we investigated this a little further, we found like the reason was that the icon itself was red, and in GitLab, red is only reserved for warnings, and also that the text wasn't left aligned. So for our next iteration, we changed the pins to gray and then left aligned all of the text. A common feedback that we saw during testing was that a lot of users thought our see more link would expand the comment in the pinned feature and not take them all the way down to the discussion thread where the comment lives. So for our next iteration, we removed the see more hyperlink and instead had the discussion, had the scroll down to the discussion after you click the title of the pin. After concept testing, we still had a major question, and that is, where is the best location for the pin feature, the main section or the sidebar? In order to answer this question, we did a round of A/B testing. We had 5 participants, 2 internal and 3 external. And our goal here was to figure out whether the main section layout was better or the sidebar layout. From our testing, we found that there were pros and cons to both, and it really was a tie. In terms of the main section layout, participants liked the in-depth content of the pins. For the sidebar layout, people liked the easier navigation between the comments. And so we decided to combine both of them for our next iteration and really have the best of both worlds. So the pins would be located in the main section. However, when you go down into the comment, there is a hyperlink that can take you back up to the pins. And that way there is an easier navigation between pins. However, after we made this design, we still had a very important question left. Can we actually build this?
And to understand that question, we did a round of mock grooming session with the principal and backend engineers, as well as the senior product manager of GitLab. And the purpose of this session was to gather technical feedback on our feature and whether this is feasible and what other edge cases we may have not considered. And this is really helpful as we have gathered a lot of good feedback, such as the edge cases to consider, like what happens when the original comment is edited and what happens when the users want to share a pin to other users and something like that. And one biggest technical feedback that we got is the technical complexity of the pinning a section of the comment, as you can see in our old demo. And therefore, for the MVP, we shifted to pinning a whole comment first and leaving pinning a section of comment to future development if we receive a significant number of requests and feedback about pinning just section of the comments. And with all the feedback that we got from the engineering and design teams, as well as iterations from our previous testing, now I'm excited to showcase our final design. And let's bring back our persona, John, with us for the experience. And I'm sure that he will love it. And the first main functionality is to create a pin. So when the user scrolls down to a discussion section, they can click on the pin icon inside the comment section to pin a comment. They can also put in an optional title too. Then the pin section will appear after the summary section. And then when they click on the header of each pin, they will be directed to the pin comment in the discussion thread. The second functionality is the ability to edit the pin title, or users can also remove a title if they don't feel the need to at all. Users can also unpin a comment if it is not relevant to the ongoing discussion anymore. And we set a pinning limit to 5. So if the issue reaches a maximum of 5 pins, when the user is trying to pin a new one, they will get an error message saying that this action cannot be done and they are encouraged to unpin the old one before performing the new one. And this is a design decision informed by our research that discussions often shift away from the original issue description because the users don't consistently update it and based on the ongoing conversations. So limiting the number of pinned comments will help the users to keep the issue description updated and stay relevant to the ongoing information. And another edge cases that we got feedback during our grooming session was concerning with what happens when the users cannot pin a comment due to some technical performances. So in this case, an alert will pop up to notify the users that this action cannot be done. And that is a walkthrough of our final design. And if we have more time, here are a few directions that we would love to consider. We love to consider more functionalities such as the ability to highlight or pin parts of the comments and the ability to share the pinned comment. And we love also to consider accessibility in our design, such as accommodating for screen readers, web versus mobile responsiveness, accessible interactions, such as redesigning the hover stats. And lastly, we love to integrate AI into the design because many participants mentioned that AI would be helpful in providing summaries in the comment or description. And what we learned from this project was also really helpful. We learned the importance of iterations because our initial concept really evolved significantly throughout the project. And this difference highlights how important it is to stay flexible, continuously testing, and adapt based on feedback. And we learned the complexity of the real-life technical workflows, and each user go through the system differently depending on their role and how their company is set up. And we learn how to design research, choosing the type of research to conduct and the types of data to collect and using new tools such as Dovetail. And lastly, we learn how to use design systems and how to leverage the existing components and interaction patterns to ensure consistency and scalability. Lastly, we want to give a special shout out to our GitLab mentors and professors for your support throughout this semester. We would not have been here without all of your helpful support. And that wraps up the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you, guys. It's a great presentation. I also want to thank, there are more people who work at GitLab that supported this than just those 4 faces you saw on that slide as well. We got some really great participation from a bunch of folks in Plan. Dasha was also able to bring in Dylan from her team to give some great technical feedback during the students mock grooming session. So thank you so much, you folks who helped support us in this. We don't have any questions in the doc, but does anybody have anything or want to add some in the doc?
I'm not sure this is a question, but you're going through your whole process, and I was like, this sounds so familiar. Like, and I was looking up previous GitLab issues, and I realized that I worked on ability to pin a comment 8 years ago, and we haven't implemented it, but the solution is very similar to what you all arrived at through your research and your planning and everything. So that was really cool to see the alignment of what we worked on years ago and then what you've learned recently in the most recent research that you all did. And it would be great to implement something like this from all the research you did and how useful it would be. So thank you all so much for sharing, and it's great to see how you talked with users and came to the conclusion, how you iterated throughout the process. So yeah, really awesome to see. Great job, everybody. I guess I can ask a question. What was the most challenging part for you all? What did you find to be the most difficult aspect of the project?
I feel like one of the most difficult parts was after like our initial discovery interviews with participants, we had so many different directions we could take it, and like really narrowing it down was very difficult, which is why we found like the concept testing to be very useful in the beginning. I also have a question for you. You're saying that you were working on the pinning feature like 6 years ago. And Chad also brought up that like there were some like older issues that wanted this feature to happen. And I was wondering, yeah, like why hasn't it happened yet?
Yeah, I think that goes back to a number of different priorities and being able to just prioritize other features above this one. And that, that comes down to various business or company decisions on what we prioritize. I know there's some product managers in here, maybe they want to speak to that a bit further, but yeah, there's just various factors that tie into like what we're going to put first, and this one just hasn't risen to the top.
Emily, you've also got a question if you want to vocalize that.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Great work. I had to join a little bit late, so it's possible that I missed this. But I'm curious how you're thinking about like what content should be included in the issue description versus what content is more relevant for like a pinned comment.
I think generally the project description is kind of like the baseline, like the overarching problem or like the details about the issue that needs to be solved in the beginning. And then also like in the comments, it would be more updated, like, oh, I tried this approach and it didn't work, so we're doing this instead, or like kind of reframing the problem. So for us, I think that it's the pinning the comments would be more of like a updated methods or updated description instead of having to rewrite everything into the project description itself.
Makes sense. Thank you. Jessica, you have the next question.
I do. Excellent job. I enjoyed listening to your presentation and seeing the work you did. My question is, what was the most surprising takeaway from this work? Or like, what was the most surprising part of the process or a light bulb moment that you had as you were going through the project?
I guess like when we tested the main section layout and the sidebar layout from our previous testing, we gathered the qualitative data that users would prefer the main section layout. So we went into that route testing with the assumption that the main section layout would be the winner. But then after another round testing, we found that there was like really pros and cons to each of the design variations. So that's why in the end we sort of combine the best of both worlds into our final design.
Yeah, I think to add on to that answer as well, in that specific process, it was very surprising to see that we still had a good number of participants that liked the sidebar layout specifically for that ease of navigation, which kind of just really highlighted even though the main section had more information, which would be helpful to get more context, it really is about the navigation aspect, the being able to do things a little bit more efficiently, even if it's just the difference between having it at the side and clicking versus having to scroll back up to the specific pin section if it was just the main layout. I think that was interesting, just importance of efficiency in small things.
Dylan, you've got a question.
Oh, yeah. So first off, awesome presentation. The grooming session was great. So I figured this presentation was also going to live up to the standards there. Funny enough, I'll be watching 10 more presentations tonight. I'm a instructor at a local university, and I guess I'm curious on, I guess, the capstone course in general. Is your experience dealing with GitLab and doing something with a industry company unique, or do all the students in your capstone course have a company assigned to them? And then a follow-up question is, I guess, if you had the choice, why did you pick GitLab?
Why don't I answer the first part because I'm the professor?
Okay.
Yes, all the projects have corporate sponsors, or some of them actually have like startups within the university incubator system. There's a program. So I curate them to see what would make good projects. One thing different about this project, which I really love, is how you actually let them groom and go from design to how it would go to engineering, because that is what the real world is. That's, I breathe that stuff. So thank you for that. And I'll let the students talk about why they chose this project. But at the beginning of the semester, I gave them a list of projects and everyone kind of chose, Chad came the first class and kind of tried to sell them on the project, let's just say, and he gave them a bunch of different choices within GitLab to work on. And then I don't know if the students and Chad narrowed down on this project scope. So I hope that from a standpoint of, how it works helps. And now the students can say why they chose this project.
Yeah, I can go first. So I chose GitLab like right from the beginning, and I did not even change my mind even after like the first initial meeting where we have only sponsors going on to like the class time to talk about their project and company, and I did not change my mind about why I chose GitLab, because I wanted to do a project with where I can get mentorship from the other designers. Because in my previous experiences, I have worked with developers, but I did not have much experience like working with the senior designers in the team. So that was like my goal in the beginning. So when looking into a sponsor to work with, I was thinking between GitLab and another company, but I really like drawn to the technical aspect of the platform that GitLab is building, and that's why I was like, they must have been an exciting product to work on, and yeah, I did not regret my decision at all.
Yes, for me to add on to my experience, I think it was super, super valuable to be working or being able to just be in contact with designers and then researchers and being able to ask them questions freely about, what do you do in your day-to-day if you were faced with like the problems that we were being faced with. That was super, super valuable. And then in terms of just the question of like, oh, why I picked this project, for me, it was a matter of I knew it would definitely be a project that I would be starting off with like zero context myself because I didn't know too much about GitLab and just software development in general. So I thought it would be interesting because I know that's something that UX researchers go into a lot, where it's like you can go into a field that you know nothing about, but they say that that's the kind of the way to do it, to just start from the ground, start from nothing and then build up. So that's why I chose.
I have very similar answers to Anna and Emily, so I don't know how much more I can add to it, but like when I first read the project description for GitLab, I didn't understand what GitLab was. Like I was very confused. It seemed like very complex. And like honestly, that was what drew me to it, because I felt like it could be a really interesting thing to learn about throughout this whole semester, and that there'd be like lots of different opportunities in terms of what we can do with the research and the design. And also I felt like there was going to be a lot of support in terms of having people who are like project managers, also engineers and designers that we'd be able to talk to. And yeah, that was another reason why I chose GitLab.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty similar to everyone else. I wanted like to work in a structured team where I can get a lot of mentorship in like various aspects of like the role, and also to have like a structured like ways of doing research, like doing screeners and all of that, and like shows like how it would actually be in the real world. Also, with very little like technical background, I knew that I would be learning like a lot of new things about software development. And like with this project, I learned new things every single day, like from research. And we're like, oh, like we didn't know this was a thing. Like, so kind of going through this project, like the learning curve is so big, like just learning about like each aspect of GitLab and like software development. So it's been like a really valuable experience.
Yeah, it's really impressive how you all really internalized GitLab in order to come for both concepts. The concept of the map, you had to understand GitLab architecture, and there's a lot going on in GitLab. So it's very impressive how much you all really took in to learn GitLab and then come up with your concepts. So yeah, great job. Nick, I think you had a question.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say really good presentation. I know this is a common problem that comes up for users, and so can definitely see value in this feature. The question I have is somewhat related to Emily's question earlier, but I was just curious, I know one of the use cases that you brought up for this pinning feature was around, users often missing important information that's not in the description that is discussed in comments. And this could help like somewhat elevate that information. But what the question I had is, did you at all consider a way to make, updating that description based on a comment a bit easier since, oftentimes that is used as a source of truth for different users? I know that you mentioned things that you'd like to look into further with this is stuff like AI, which I could definitely see playing into something like that. But I was just curious if you guys considered anything around updating the description a bit easier.
Yeah, I think originally our first version kind of had the pin section being at the top near the description. So I think we had been thinking of it as like a continuous of the description in that way. But then through our kind of our testing processes, we found that like people people very much differentiated those two sections. They didn't want it at the top or they didn't want it directly near the description because they um they went to the description first to get the general context, and then I think in that way our pinning section was more then shifted more to like highlighting the discussions that were happening specifically um, as a way to kind of reduce the time that you would be spending reading through the discussion threads. But yeah, I think in a way originally we had thought it would be kind of an easier way to pin things next to the discussion, but it kind of just shifted. But no, that is a fair point.
Cool, thank you. Sheldon, I think you have the next question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the presentation. It was really nice. I have a question. So it's kind of related to what Dylan said. So Dylan asked about GitLab as a company, and I want to ask about GitLab as a product, especially because we built a product for help others with like deliver stuff with more efficiency. So I want to ask you, how was your experience learning about GitLab and using GitLab? And while we are talking about tools, like what other tools you have used? I know you used Figma, so how was that and in the whole process?
I can go first. I think my experience with learning about GitLab was super confusing. I think even just the layout of an issues page I feel like I didn't conceptualize that like too long into the project which was funny. But as far as other tools that we used, I think it was just honestly we heavily relied on Figma and like FigJam and those boards to since it was a lot of different themes and ideas that we were working with, it was just really easy to be able to move those around and group them as we wanted and like highlighted what we found was important and collaborate in that space. But yeah, that's kind of my general note on my process of GitLab, just overall confusing, but we got there eventually.
And you have a bunch of people in this room that can shape the product, so do you have feedback for them?
For the well, I think it's a lot of text. I know you have like the sections broken up with like the headers and stuff, but I think maybe like my initial thing, I think the big click moment for me was just being able to conceptualize, okay, description and then like all the linked items and then the discussion and the activity. But I feel like that took me a while differentiating those. Like now I can envision an issues page, but before it was just all this text. So I feel like the moment I broke it up into sections is when it all clicked for me. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, what I found confusing is the child items, linked items, merge requests, and all that stuff, like kind of conceptualizing the technical terms and how like the issues relate to each other, especially when we were doing that tree. That I found that was really confusing. And like I also learned that like if you link other issues in the comments, it does not automatically update in the um linked items, which originally I thought that that's where it came from. So there were a lot of like new things that we learned about GitLab. In terms of the tools we also used Dovetail, which was really new to us. Um, and that was really useful because we kind of like uploaded our user interviews, and then we were able to like highlight like aha moments or like good and like improvements and like confusion. So that definitely really helped with our research.
Yeah, and to add on to that, in the beginning, we also did comparative analysis into other project management tools such as Jira and GitHub and other tools. But at one point, we realized that there's not the direction that we went into. So like even throughout our user interviews, some other users also like show us the screens of their workflow using other tools, but we still feel like we're still learning a lot of things, like even throughout our user interviews. And because like each person has a different way of setting up their GitLab workflow. So I think just like a steep learning curve for a new person.
Yeah, for me, I feel like when I first was learning about GitLab and like went onto a GitLab issue page, I was a little bit overwhelmed with like all the different functionalities it could have. And also I think the page I went on to had a lot of different like labels. So there's like a bunch of different colors. I was like, oh my gosh, what's this? But I feel like after like watching users show how they would use the issues page, like that became a lot more clear in terms of what is what. And they were into like differentiate what's actually on an issues page. In terms of tools, yeah, like Dovetail was very helpful. That was the first time using it. But I also really liked it when our team was just like drawing on paper and then doing like sticky notes in class. I felt that was like a really fun way to get our ideas out, and sometimes a bit easier than trying to make stuff in Figma or like doing a mural board.
Michelle, you've got a question.
Yeah, first of all, this is fantastic. Like, this is awesome that you guys are sort of addressing a real, well, not sort of, you are addressing a real world issue. Um, for you guys, it may seem like, oh, it's such a steep learning curve, and maybe because you're new to GitLab that it's confusing. But trust me when I say, I think most of us on a daily basis still get lost in issues and epics even, and then how those lead to merge requests. Yeah, it's a very real world issue, and that's really cool that you're getting to sort of solve this problem for us, and getting to experience what it's like to be in each of your roles. And that's my question for you guys is, what was it like for each of you to hold your individual roles within this product, whether it be a product manager, or sorry, project manager, your designer? Were there some of the challenges you've learned through this in each of your roles, or some of the maybe disagreements you've had with each other? How did you resolve those things? And perhaps how did it change your perspective on this role, and if you would like to continue a career in this role?
Yeah, I can start. So I'm the project manager for this role, and it's actually my first time like doing project management. I've always done like product design, so I was really new. Um, but some of the main challenges was like prioritizing the feature or like the components of what we're like moving forward with. I had a talk with Dasha as well, like, and kind of like choosing which feature to prioritize is really important in terms of like design and business. So that was like we had to like talk amongst us and like use research to back up like which feature we should move forward with and like which one we should kind of leave behind for future iterations. The other thing would also be like timeline management. We took longer than we thought to um, do our initial research and also to recruit participants in some parts of the testing. So some of the timeline did get a little bit pushed back. So kind of making everything like flow and like um doing like making it back on track like was difficult, but for me I learned a lot from this experience, and also like I was given the opportunity to shadow Dasha in her like product management meetings, so I actually got to see how like she actually does it in like real context, and that was like really like helpful to see if I were to continue with this, like this is kind of like what um I would be doing. And like honestly, I'm really like interested in pursuing this role as well.
For me, I feel like the roles were a little bit flexible. Like I put content writer and UX research, but I don't think we really we didn't really do any like content writing like specifically and had that as a role. And I mainly like bounced around between like research and helping on with the design. But in terms of like the research side, I think it was really cool to see how you guys like do recruitment screeners. Like that part was very interesting, how companies actually do recruiting for user research. And also like in my past internships, I've done some moderation, and I feel like that was really fun to be able to do more of and also get feedback from the team in terms of moderation. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I'm the designer on the team, but I have never actually like gone through the whole process of like coming up with the research and then choosing the types of data to collect properly before. So that was a really interesting perspective, like actually going through the process with the researchers and also moderating 1 or 2 sessions. So that is really interesting side that I have to experience. And in terms of the design, I really love like just iterating on different versions of the design. And since I have an upcoming summer internship in UX design as well, I feel like this experience is really a great stepping stone for me to prepare for my future work. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think that I'm gonna stick with UX design for life, or at least for a long time in the moment. And also, I'm really grateful for all the great feedback I got from the design managers and other product designers. Because as I have mentioned in the beginning, my goal was to get mentorship from other senior designers, and I got some really good feedback and perspectives on how a design interaction should function in which cases, and that's why I learned a lot during this whole experience.
For me, similar to Delia on the researcher side and the moderating, I did find the like moderating interviews like very fun, and um there was like little just minor challenges in the sense of like, when to deviate back to certain points that you were trying to get at, or letting the participant just maybe give you something surprising. But it was very helpful to kind of then ask like those questions that I was having then to our GitLab like team, and ask them for advice and everything. I did want to or answer then the question of like if challenges arose between or like within our like Tufts team. Because I'm like thinking back to it, I feel like we all just like happened to be on the same page, like especially when it came to ideas, like even with the crazy eights, like it was just funny to observe how we like had different, like very small differences on on the same like feature ideas. And so I think it just like happened to work out in that way. So it's like in a way it was good to have like a team that where we were on the same page and we collaborated. But I'm also thinking like, oh, the conflict would have been an interesting learning point too. But I guess that's like for another team for us. And
You'll get it. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't want, but at the end of the day, it's a really good lesson. So that's great that you all worked well together. But this is really fantastic. And I do want to reiterate, like, this is a very real world problem. Like for me as a product manager, I get pinged on at least 10 different things in the day, and I get a huge to-do list. And every to-do that I click into, I brought to a new issue. But then I have to scroll back up to read the context, to read all the entire thread, to then go to my comment, and then maybe respond with some form of knowledgeable reply. So this is really cool that you guys are getting to address actually something that is a huge pain point for at least for me. I don't want to speak for everyone, but for me. But it's just a lot of the experiences that you've had and the stumbling and trying to learn and the steep learning curves. The only thing I can respond is to chuckle, because a lot of those are things we experience day to day too. So don't take it as that you guys are struggling with the product. Is that there are improvements that can be made, and welcome you guys to come back and make more improvements too, if you'd like.
We don't have any other questions in the agenda, so I'm going to wrap us up. And surprise, I've got more plaudits. The students this semester, this is the second time I've participated in this, and last year they were great too. But you really made it easy for us. The students came to our very first meeting with like a slide deck and an agenda and a Gantt chart of how they thought the semester was going to go. They were really on top of their stuff. So thank you for all the hard work that you did. I think it really paid off for you. I also want to thank Gina. Gina's the one who started this. She is a Tufts alum, and she was looking for somebody else to like run the circus this year. But she put in a ton of work, especially in organizing research this year. So thank you so much for that. Also, Dasha, this is the first time we've had a product manager like be a full-time member of our like advising team. I think it was a really valuable experience. I also think it's really cool that Moya was able to do like kind of like a ride along with you. Just I think everything really, really gelled. So thank you all so much for your hard work, and great job.
No, yes. And then we had a little thank you at the end, but yeah, huge thank you to the GitLab team and all the internal participants. It was definitely huge, huge help in summary.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you other folks for coming, for asking your questions, for giving your feedback, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.